Hey everyone. So today I have a bit of a surprise package here. These are a couple of maps that I found in my local community book box. Someone left them there, and they're all from the 60s, 70s, 80s. And I'm guessing they were there for quite a while because the books usually move quite fast, is my impression. But they were kind of stacked in a corner and it looked like someone had put them aside. So it's easier to get to the books. But I thought when I found them, these are just perfect for us. So let's have a look through them. First of all, let's see which ones we have. So number one is a map of Britain, Karte von London, a map of London, and it's a British Tourist Authority publication from 1976, and it costs 10p. Then we have a city map, the Stadtplan of Bucharest in Romania. And maybe this is the year 1981. I guess that would fit. It's from a Romanian tourist center in Bucharest. And the explanations here are all in German. So this was specifically for tourists from German-speaking countries. So there must have been a good number, which I didn't know. Then this one's really cute. It says, "The roots of my jet carpet." It's a little difficult to read. There's not much contrast here between the black letters and this carpet design. But you can see this cute little figure here in the center with a red and white turban and a very cute moustache. And this is a map of an Indian company, of Air India. And I think I saw somewhere that it's also from the 70s, but I might be mistaken. Right, I'm not seeing any dates here. Alright, there it is. It's the 10th edition from 1971. And this is a nice thick paper and I think makes really nice sounds. So we could have a look at this afterwards when we're through with them. Next we have a tourist map. This is number 29, Chor und Saualpe. And you can see this is for taking a trip through the mountains in Austria. The company still exists, Freitag und Bernd, and they make a lot of really nice maps. In fact, we've looked at some of them before, if I'm not mistaken. And you can see that they published maps for all of Austria. And they're all numbered, so you can easily find the one that you need. It starts here with the area around Vienna, Wienerwald. Then we have Schneebergrachs, which are sort of the closest mountains. Schneeberg, in fact, being the highest mountain in the area around Vienna in Lower Austria. You have Ötscher. Can't see number 4, but here Enstal, Wachau, Donautal Mühlviertel. You have the Upper Austrian region with Linz-Steyr, sort of the three big cities there. In the east you have Burgenland with Leitergebirge and Neusiedlersee. And the one that we're looking at here is this one, 29 Chor und Saualpe, which is in Carinthia. And I think this one's quite interesting, so we're gonna have a look at this one too later on. Okay, then this here says Olympiaplan München. So this is a map of Munich. It has quite a lot of adverts in it. As you can see, I thought that was really fascinating. And then on the other side, a big nice map for the Olympic Games, which were, I think, in 1972, if I'm not mistaken. Also in the early 70s. And whoever owned these maps maybe took a little tour there. Okay, then we have one of Switzerland here with the Matterhorn, nicely displayed on the center. This is from the ÖAMTC, which is the Österreichische Automobil-, Motorrad- und Touring-Club. So basically it's a road map, is what that means. And I feel like it's quite handy, the way that it's folded. Because you don't need to unfold the entire map, you can just look through it like that and find your way. Okay, then this one is really big, so I won't completely unfold it. But this is the Tyrol. It's another Austrian region. Specifically Wörgl, so this is probably number 120. They probably have a lot of other maps too, and you can see this one's really detailed and quite large. And it has this really typical smell of something that's been stuck in a cupboard since the 70s. I'm sure you can imagine what it smells like. I tried to air some of them out a little bit, so it wouldn't be quite as strong. This one's quite cute. Sort of the opposite of the Wörgl map, a very small map of Venice. And then here we have a map of Budapest. And it's listed here in several languages: map, carte, plan, carta, I guess. But I had a quick look at it, and this one is all in Hungarian. So you have some translations here. For example, you can see art memorials, scenic spots, Monument artistique, Curiosité, Kunstdenkmäler, Sehenswürdigkeiten, and then here in Cyrillic letters, probably in Russian. But the explanations are all in Hungarian. So it's a bit difficult for me to make sense of this map here. I've been to Budapest a couple times, but it was a long time ago, and I don't remember the city very well. Might be time for another visit. I really like this illustration here on the front, with the use of colors. And you can see the Danube here on the bottom. Right, let's put this one on the bottom since it's the largest one. And before we get back to our two maps of Air India and Carinthia, I want to show you this thing here. This is really cool. I think we might have had one of these when I was younger, but I haven't seen this in a very long time. It is a map of Austria. You can see Vienna right here, and here, sort of in this white line, is the Austrian border. It's a little hard to make out, but that's okay, because of course the border is not the important part that we're looking at here. What we want to see are the red lines, which are the roads. So we're looking at connections between cities. And down here in the corner, it says Entfernung ab. So that means distance from. And you can pick a city here. Just by pulling on the side, we can switch to Gmunden, Hartberg, Horn, Imst, Innsbruck. In fact, let's start with this one. So Innsbruck would be right here in Tyrol. And we can see if we want to go, say, to Zell am See, it would be 150 kilometers. If we want to continue to Salzburg, it would be 164. I think this here stands for Straßwalchen, maybe. It's a little difficult sometimes to see how the numbers relate to these cities, but this one is surely Gmunden, 241 kilometers, Wels, 260, Linz, 299. And if we follow this big red route here, we get all the way to Vienna, which is at a distance of 465 kilometers from Innsbruck. So, quite a trip. Oh, sorry, you have to go down here. And of course, since this is quite a mountainous region, it might take a while. Okay, if we pull it out further, we can also see Kitzbühel right here. Klagenfurt, which would be down here in Carinthia, the area we're going to visit in a moment. We have Knittelfeld right here. Krems, not too far from Vienna. Kufstein, back in Tyrol. And that's it for this side. But the cool thing is, you can pull this out. You can see here on the side, this is G to K. But you can turn it over for S to Z. So this would be Zell am See, Wörgl, Wiener Neustadt, Wien, Wels, Vöcklabruck, Villach, Stockerau, Steyr, Spital an der Drau, and Seefeld. And then we can fold it open, and here we have A to F and L to S. So this is really fascinating. Of course, today you wouldn't really need it anymore, would you? But at the time, I'm sure this was really useful. And it looks like it's been used quite a lot too. They probably had it in their car for a few years. And had a look at it. Maybe they drove to Milan too, or Trieste, to Zagreb, or Prague, or maybe Stuttgart. I'm sure this was really handy at the time. Okay, so these two are the maps that I'd like to have a quick look at today. It's not really in detail, but we can come back to any of these here. So, let's start with the one from Carinthia. You can see that you can take it out. Someone added the title of the map here in case you lose the cover, Chor und Saualpe. And we also have a little stump here, F. Beinhauer 1021. This is the second district of Vienna, Praterstraße 66. I haven't looked up that address, whether maybe there's still a shop there, whether there used to be a shop there. Not sure about that. Okay, so I've already mentioned we're looking at a corner of Carinthia here. If we pick out the back of the cover quickly, we are here. But Carinthia would be this entire region, including Drau und Geiltal, Kärntner Seen, Ostkarawanken, Steiner Alpen, Julische Alpen sort of extends here beyond the Austrian border, but would still include Carinthia. And specifically, we have one of the valleys here going right through the center. This is the Lavantal. After this river here going right through the middle. And obviously this is quite typical for any mountainous regions, that oftentimes in the valleys you have some sort of river, either large or small, that runs right through the center. And the Lavantal was formed by a glacier. You can see that up here it gets a little narrower if we continue north towards Bad Leonhard, but especially this part here from Wolfsberg to St. Andre, St. Paul. It's quite spacious here. You have mountains on either side, the ones that gave the map their title. You have Voralpe on our right hand side and Saualpe on the left hand side. Here in the south we have the most important river of Carinthia, which is the Drau, running through the Jaunfeld here. I think there's also a valley of a similar name. And if we follow the Drau, we can see that here it then runs along the border between Carinthia and Slovenia. However, this is a bit of an older map, so what we have written here on the bottom is not Slovenia, but Yugoslavia. So, running through some of the mountains here. And I think this is actually a really interesting area. The thing about Carinthia is that officially it has two names. In German, the area would be called Kärnten, but it also has a Slovenian name, which is Koroška. And especially here in the south, so along the border to Slovenia, you have a linguistic minority that speaks Slovenia. In Austria, there's a couple of these protected linguistic minorities, which basically predate the Austrian state, and they have certain rights. And that's been a bit of a difficult history in Austria, especially also here in Carinthia. Basically what we have here in this region is actually historically a Slovenian settlement that extends quite far north, so not just through Carinthia, but actually all the way to Upper Austria, so north of the Alps. And we can see that in some of the names of the area. One of the other words for Slovenian that's still being used here in Carinthia is Windisch. It basically just means the same. There's a couple of difficult histories to the word, but historically it was a neutral word that just meant Slovenian. And sometimes you have different little villages or cities that have Windisch in their name. And there's one quite far north, like I said, in Upper Austria called Windischgarsten. And I didn't realize until yesterday, basically, that this means it probably had a Slovenian or Slavic history. In fact, more than 1,000 years ago, in the 8th century, all of this was a Slavic principality, which was called Carinthia. So you can see the name of Carinthia in the old name for the region. And while sort of the areas where Slovenian was spoken eventually sort of moved further south along the border to Slovenia, you do have a lot of places that still have two names, or you can see remnants of the language in the names of places. That's quite typical, of course, for any area. And in fact, this has become part of the Austrian cultural heritage, the Slovenian names. So Slovenian place names, to be exact, in Carinthia. So yeah, a little bit of a difficult history, but I think really fascinating, and it tells us a lot about what people came here when and where they settled down. If you want to visit Carinthia, I would recommend you do so in summer, especially in this region here. You can see you would have to continue on map number 23. There are a lot of beautiful lakes that are great for swimming in summer. And you have a lot of summer tourism here, so very beautiful place. Alright, let's fold this one up again. If I remember how it was folded. Like this. There we go. And let's put it back into its yellow cover. And if we're talking about holidays, then I think this is a great map to have a look at. So we've just established that this is from 1971. And it's a world map, so we see some interesting parts that don't exist anymore in this form. We have here in Europe, of course, Yugoslavia. We have the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And you can see that instead of, say, Kazakhstan, it would say Kazakh SSR. We have the Uzbek SSR, Turkmen SSR, Tajik SSR. We have Iran, also labeled as Persia, which I find quite interesting. And here, for example, in this area, we can see Turkey, we can see Azerbaijan. This is here Armenian SSR, Georgian SSR, and then it labels the Caucasus, so the mountain range here. But further north we don't have any of the Soviet republics listed. Into Europe we have the Ukrainian SSR and Belarusian, Lithuanian, Latvian, Estonian SSR, and St. Petersburg still called Leningrad at the time. Okay, so since this is Air India, it makes sense that they are at home here in India. We can see that these red circles are airports served by Air India, and the red lines are their routes. We also have a little map here with the flights and the distances in both miles and kilometers, listed alphabetically. And another little table here on the side with date, from and to, and you can list the hours. So you can put in your own journeys. Which these tourists chose not to do. In fact, it doesn't look like they've used this map a lot. They might have just picked it up at some point, maybe in a travel office. Or maybe they were flying with Air India, but then just added it to their pile of maps in a cupboard where it's probably been sitting since the 70s. Okay, so we say that the airport that is mostly flown to and from is Bombay, as it says here. And we have connections to Madras, to Calcutta, and Delhi in India. We have connections in Asia to Bangkok, via Vietnam to Hong Kong, and to Tokyo in Japan. And the first time I looked at this map, I was a little confused about whether these little corners here also indicated stops. But since we don't have any circles, it means they just changed the flight route. You're going to notice in a moment that especially over Europe it gets a bit confusing. So we have some blue lines here too. However, I'm not sure if these were printed or whether our unknown donators added these. They might have flown from Jakarta to Thailand, to Bangkok, maybe Singapore, or do some stops here in Malaysia. Might have been to Bombay, Madras. But they might have climbed a mountain then too. We have a stop here in Kathmandu. And you can see that this is not far from Everest, Annapurna, Dhalagiri. So you have all of these really, really high mountains here in the Himalaya. And a stop not far away from there. It would be really interesting. So I think you just automatically make up an image of who these people might have been. And this doesn't really fit with the impression I had. I was like, oh, they're just going for nice walks in the Austrian Alps and maybe in Switzerland, but they might have taken these really extensive trips with some interesting climbing. So of course the situation there would have been very different in the 70s too. Okay, let's have a look at the connections from India towards London. We can see that there's a great number of connections and routes. For one, we can take the one here north over Russia towards Moscow, where we have a circle. But you can also take it across Pakistan and Iran with a stop in Tehran. We also have stops in Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Bahrain, as well as Kuwait. Air India flew to Cairo and Beirut. And then they had a number of routes across Istanbul, over Greece and up through Yugoslavia and Austria towards Frankfurt in Germany. This was one of the more important airports for Air India. They also flew to Rome, to Geneva, to Paris, and finally London. So there's a flight across the Baltic Sea to Moscow. And it just gets a bit confusing. It kind of looks like there might be a stop in Prague, but there isn't. It's just obviously an important city. And it's written in big fat letters. We do have one flight to America from London, across Ireland and then across the Atlantic Ocean, down the North American coast, over Boston to New York. I think that Air India added more routes and more destinations in the United States later. But at the time we only have one in New York. And then the one we haven't looked at yet is one in Aden, in Addis Ababa, in Nairobi in Kenya, and in Entebbe. We can also fly to Mauritius. And we got a little sidetracked here for the blue lines, but you can also fly to Australia, to Perth, across to Sydney, and you can fly to the Fiji Islands, to Nandi. We can have a look here. Perth to Sydney would be 3,330 kilometers at 2,000 miles. That is really far. That seems a bit much to me. Perth to Singapore would be almost 4,000 kilometers at 2,500 miles. What else do we have? Beirut, Bombay would be also over 4,000 kilometers or 2,500 miles. And up here, London, Moscow, 5,600 miles or 2,500 kilometers. Okay, let's just quickly turn this one over. So I really like this part here. You can see some of these connections close up. For example, here from Delhi, to give you a really good idea of how they flew across Pakistan and Afghanistan, across Kabul and Samarkand along the Silk Road, as we know, across the Aral Sea and what would be Kazakhstan today, and then here towards Pinza we have the Volga here, with a couple of reservoirs, the Volgograd Reservoir, Kuybyshev Reservoir, Gorky Reservoir, and then here towards Moscow. And we can also see some of the large cities around Moscow, like Kazan, near Volgograd, Yaroslavl. We can also see from the Aral Sea, here in the Uzbek SSR, the Amudaya, which is a river that we also mentioned last time with Marco Polo's travels. So we cross the Amudaya to get into Pamir and cross the mountain ranges here. We have the Hindu Kush here, Kashmir, we have Tibet here, Nepal. So you can kind of nicely see the lay of the land. And of course the same thing here, where you can see the Arabian Sea, the Gulf of Oman, Persian Gulf. We have the Red Sea here and the Mediterranean Sea. You can see Euphrates and Tigris, colored in green, red, and then the deserts here in Saudi Arabia. Don't quite know where the city of Hormuz would be here, but we also know that Marco Polo would have traveled towards the coastline here and then back across Persia, north, as we've seen last time. Alright, so let's fill this up. Let's thank this cute little dude for showing us around. So those were 3 of the maps that I found, and there's still plenty more. I think we could have a look at the Switzerland one. And I'm definitely going to pick out the one about London, but maybe later this year. What do you think? But for today, I think it's time to wish you all a good night and just say thank you for supporting me. So, see you again next week.